Welcome, friends, to episode 260 of Color Magic, your Magic Gaming podcast, where we talk about all types of issues that affect gamers at and away from their gaming tables and computers. I am your host, PowrDragn, and for 260 episodes, crazy number, still got my main man riding shotgun, Brian Sonic. How's it going, bro?
I almost scared myself because I moved forward, and I guess the camera landed at the same time I moved forward, so it looked like I teleported there for a second. Like, what in the world? Multiverse moment.
Man, it's been a wild time. Like, I thought I was going to be congratulating you on NFL stuff, but hell, both our teams look like they're a mess right now. So that ain't even cool to talk about. Like,
The potential new quarterback looked good.
That's true. You at least have that going for you. So that's something. But yeah, man, it's been a wild time. Like, weather's starting to change. This is a fun time of year. A little less when your teams are getting their teeth kicked in on national TV. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about some gaming. We got a lot of stuff to cover. But as always, if you haven't yet, go check out patreon.com/colormagic. Pay us a little bit of love so that way we can kind of keep this going for you and get you a shout out just like Vorthos Mike. I want to say thank you for being a patron. Also, don't forget that if you are a patron, you do have access to our Discord. If you want to submit questions, if you want to give us topics for the dinner table, things like that, that all goes on there. And people just share other stuff community-wise in the Discord as well. So being a member also gets you some extra perks on top of everything else. But all right, man, let's talk about the lead story because this got announced, I guess it was yesterday, actually, that MagicCon and the World Championships got posted up. And there were a couple of weird things about the schedule. So let's at least just give the rundown of the schedule real quick to kind of level set things here. But there are going to be 3 MagicCons next year, not 4, just 3. And the first one is in February in Chicago. Now, I will say, last year, I felt like we got a little lucky in Chicago. Because it only kind of snowed a little bit. I think it was on Friday night, overnight, and it wasn't a lot. It was maybe an inch or whatever. It was a totally reasonable day in Chicago. I don't know if we're going to be able to do it again 2 years in a row. That's risky.
I guess hope. Obviously, I don't hope nothing bad happens weather-wise, but that may be what it takes for them to stop scheduling it in Chicago in February. Because nobody else does that.
Don't get me wrong. I'm sure you get it cheaper in the winter in Chicago.
You'd get it cheaper if you held it, I don't know, like on a paddle boat in the middle of the Arctic Ocean, too. But
I feel you. So we'll see. I don't know. I mean, I'll at least say...
Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, literally, the most popular form of entertainment in America is the National Football League. And even they don't go to Chicago or any other cold weather cities in February. And football is, to some extent, designed to be played outside.
Yeah.
Magic ain't more popular than football.
I just saw the other day, by the way, that the Buffalo Bills have this cool, very pretty stadium being built. And they just decided to not have a roof on it. And the place where they actually were trying to get citizens to come help shovel snow for Monday night games the last 2 years. Like, that makes no sense to me when you're making a brand new stadium. But anyway.
Well, I mean, it's Buffalo. You wouldn't. That's part of their mystique is playing in the cold, and the Dolphins might beat them if they played inside. So
hell,
part of their advantage is being in New York in negative 10-degree weather.
I mean, I guess we'll hope they don't get any games postponed the way things have been. But yeah, so Chicago, tough one. But I will say, at least infrastructure, city, whatever is at least built to handle that on some level. So we'll see. But then in June, on the 20th to the 22nd, they're going to be in Las Vegas.
Again. And so that's another one.
June, the summer in Las Vegas.
Yeah. We messed up and did that one year. And oh my God, it was excruciating.
Yeah, now don't get me wrong. You know what else I do? I grew up in the heat of Texas, so I have
got
some
nothing
experience.
On Nevada, though. As they say, it's a dry heat.
Oh, my thing is, just because you can doesn't mean you want to.
Right.
That's the thing. Like, that's a little tough, too. Now, again, I will say with both of these, I don't know what their agreements are with the venues. Maybe you do a 2 or 3 year deal. You got to take some weekends or not or whatever. Maybe they're trying to fill space, so you get it on a discount. No clue.
Wizards is telling you that we think you nerds will go literally if we had it, on the Titanic, we think y'all would show up. And so far, they've been right.
I was about to say,
so until they have one of
will.
these and nobody shows up, this is gonna keep getting worse and worse. MagicCon Saudi Arabia coming soon.
I mean, I will say this too, though. There are, based on Chicago this year, there are a very large number of people that I think, except for maybe going out to eat, probably didn't leave the venue. So, maybe it just doesn't matter. They get there, they stay inside. Like,
I guess also that.
Yeah. Maybe that's fine now that I'm thinking about it. Like, I like to go out and maybe visit a local store, go do something, while I try to get there a day early, leave a day late. But maybe that's the logic. I have no idea.
Now, I really think the logic is that they said these people will show up wherever, and it's been proven. So until one of them doesn't sell out.
I will say this, though. After seeing the third location, which is this year, it's going to be September, it says 26th to the 28th in Atlanta. You know what? If you were going to do Vegas and Atlanta, unfortunately, one of them is going to get stuck being during the summer. And Atlanta's also hot as hell during the summer. So that's a no-win situation. Now, why that was the chosen city, I don't know, other than the fact that Atlanta has the busiest airport in the country and has all three of these cities have international access from all over the place. Yeah. So I'm sure that plays a part in it as well.
I'm sure they're trying to some extent, okay, you got one, you got one, I guess, the West Coast, one up north, one, the East Coast just got left, because I guess we're in a row doing 3, East Coast got left out this time.
Yeah, I guess Atlanta's the closest thing to the East Coast, I guess.
Yeah.
All things considered. Now, that being said, they do have whatever we're calling these Grand Prix, not Grand Prix, that are now being run by Star City. Like, those will be around the country as well. So you'll have those happening. There'll still be Command Fest throughout the year. So those will still be happening. So it's not like places won't get anything. But there were a lot of people upset that there wasn't an international MagicCon this year.
Yeah, or at least I heard great things about Amsterdam last year.
Yeah, and Amsterdam seemingly went well. Now, the only thing I could find is, I guess there were a lot of vendors that had some, and I'm trying to get better, clear details so I could reach out to specific people. But what I was hearing, I guess, is there were issues between customs getting their stuff set up, whatever, I guess, with the international laws or travel, something like that. So I'm wondering if at the moment Wizards took a year off, maybe trying to reassess that and then tackle it again, potentially. But I don't know. That's just speculation on that part. I know, and this isn't the same, but I know years ago, people might have forgotten about this, but we actually had a Gen Con West Coast at one point. I believe it was in San Diego, if I'm not mistaken. And they tried that for 2 years, but the issue was there were a lot of extra expenses for the vendors. Because, yeah, like from what I understand at the time, I don't know if it's still this way, they couldn't even just plug in their own stuff. You had to have actual like union workers come and do everything or whatever. And that slowed stuff down. It was hard getting in and out of the venue, all kinds of stuff. So ultimately, a bunch of people had said, like, we're not interested in doing it. And ultimately, because of that, there's no Gen Con West Coast now. So maybe something along those lines is part of it. But I mean, you could also try it other cities. There's other countries you could have went into. I don't know. I get it why people are upset, though.
Yeah.
Right? You're kind of hoping you get more of those large events. Because, I mean, the cities are getting Command Fests, and those are fun, and you get artists at those and everything else. But it's still not like the flagship event.
Yeah, plus if you play something other than Commander, that doesn't help you at all.
Yeah, that's true too. If you want to do other stuff. So
that's one of the other complaints, is that I guess Pioneer was not represented at all in any of these events.
Well, the Pioneer thing was because they also announced the next year's RCQ schedule. And I believe one of them was modern and the other two were standard, I think was the issue. And there wasn't a Pioneer one. And that kind of upset some people. Partly because Pioneer is probably, if you're looking at older formats, probably the most balanced or entertaining one right now. But I also understand the fact that Wizards being Wizards, you're trying to get standard pushed again, right? So standard's going to eat up and now maybe you could have replaced the modern one, but you also have the problem of business, right? Wizards also just made modern masters that they want to keep getting played, whatever. So it's a tough thing, man. This is kind of the thing we always come back to with there being so many different formats available for Magic. Is like, it's hard to keep them all at the forefront all the time. Now, I will say this in the announcement. We did see that the World Championships, or World Championship 31, which is crazy to think we've had that many of those, but that does not have a date attached to it yet, as far as I know, but it will be at the end of the year. They said it will be in December, early December, and that's kind of all we know for 2025. So it's possible that event could be set somewhere as well. However, it's also going to be a closed event. They said that'll be for the competitors, media, whatever. It's not going to be a generally open event to the public, which is a bit disappointing. But I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case, if they just do it in Seattle again. Because I think we had the one, was it Thunder Junction, I think, that didn't have a MagicCon or it wasn't held at a MagicCon, so they did it just in Seattle. And I think they might do something like that again, because it seemingly worked well. The coverage was good. Like, obviously it was going to be low cost for Wizards.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But how do you feel about all this, Ben? Because I mean, the city locations, the time of year, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I have no desire to go to Chicago in February or get messed up and went to Vegas in June one time. So I'm not trying to do that again.
But so, you always got Atlanta in September.
that were, if I were to go to any of them, that probably would be the one.
I'm gonna tell you what, though, I ain't never seen more Waffle Houses in my life than in Atlanta.
I don't know. Is it headquartered in Georgia? I have no idea why that's.
I guess so. Like, I'm gonna tell you, this is how many Waffle Houses there were. Okay, at the hotel next to the CNN Center, that's not far from the Atlanta Stadium, whatever that hotel is. I was staying there, and somebody came out, asked like, "Hey, where's the Waffle House?" So I'm like, "Oh, it's like 3 blocks that way." And I'm like pointing in the direction. The guy's like, "No, it's like 2 blocks this way." And I'm like, "No, I was just there yesterday. It's 3 blocks that way. I promise you." And the guy's like, "Dude, we just had lunch there. It's 2 blocks." And I'm like, "Wait, hold up." So I get out my phone. No lie, there is 5 blocks between 2 big Waffle Houses. And apparently that's all through the city. They're just Waffle Houses everywhere.
Well, look at Starbucks. That's become Starbucks. Well, that's where we are in America. It's just,
I mean,
each neighborhood to some extent gets its own Walmart. I guess in Atlanta, each neighborhood gets its own Waffle House.
To me, it's like, on the one hand, I'm like, God, that's too many. But if they all stay in business,
yeah, apparently it's not.
It's the right number, I guess. You know what I mean? Like,
now I had one of those situations where I didn't realize that the local Chili's had closed, and I directed somebody to a restaurant that I never saw them again, but I still felt bad that I had sent somebody to because I swear I had just been there. I think a couple of you can close a restaurant really fast. It can be.
That is a little tough. I think I did that once to like a TGI Fridays.
Yeah, I mean, they're franchises. They sometimes they spring up quick and they can be closed down just as quickly, unfortunately.
Yeah, to kind of wrap this up, one thing I will say is that I do at least appreciate that we got all the events, all the locations, the dates well in advance.
That is
right?
Good
so if you've got to make plans even for February, you have like 4 or 5 months to do that, right? That's nice. And hell, if you need to take time off, if you're trying to figure out your frequent flyer points or whatever, right? Like, you have a whole year now basically to plan the other 2 events and whatever else comes up after that. Like, Command Fest normally get announced like April-ish for like summer and whatever. So those will probably still be shorter, but this is cool. I don't mind it. It's just a little weird. We're not going to know the inside story on why there's not one internationally. They did say there's only going to be the 3 MagicCons this year, so it's not like we didn't list it and there'll be one later, unless something magically
Yeah, which
changes.
is weird. If all of the ones did well last year, why would you skip? Or maybe, like you said, maybe there was something that happened in Amsterdam that we just don't know about. It just
Yeah.
obviously it feels bad for anybody outside of America, or because we're trying, in theory, trying to grow the game and trying to make it more diverse. And with this, with them printing cards in fewer languages, a lot of this feels bad.
Yeah, and honestly, it's tough because on a lot of levels we talk about like, and not just Wizards, just big companies as a whole. They're like, oh well, they can afford to do this thing, or they should do this thing because they made $1 billion or whatever. But sadly, at the end of the day, like unless they know the return on investment and think it's worth it, it doesn't matter that they can. Sadly, we think it would be positive.
Also, if
But
you'd like to grow the game in other countries, is a thing you pretty much have to do, or it won't grow.
yeah,
You,
but
in
I'm
theory, would
also
like it to be played all over the world as opposed to just in America. Although it seems like, especially with the printing, maybe they have just kind of given up on some of these
that,
markets.
and I think
It's
that's
just,
part of it too, right? If you sit and you look at the numbers and you say, "Hey, we're spending this much, and there's this many headaches or whatever," and it's either just not growing or not profitable enough to keep up with. At one point, inflation was crazy and whatever. So it's just like maybe that's the logic.
yeah, and companies, they don't announce they've given up on a region because
Oh,
companies
sure,
don't like
sure.
to announce negative news. It just you just don't ever see them in your area again.
Yeah, you
Basically,
just
is
give
how
the
that works.
business reason why you're not doing stuff there anymore and move on.
Yeah.
You know. So who knows what the reason actually is? I couldn't tell you. But, maybe they're also seeing enough draw from Command Fest and stuff that they've been doing because those apparently are all going well when they post them. So maybe they figure that's good enough for now and they'll come up with another plan. And there's also the reality that maybe whoever was in charge of picking and planning locations, whatever, possibly just didn't realize how upset people were going to be or how much backlash there was. So then it gets prioritized for next year.
How
That's
would you
always possible.
not know? Especially again, if because we're still operating under the theory that Amsterdam was successful. I've heard that if Wizards has, and maybe there are numbers that indicate otherwise, but everything I heard was that it went off.
Oh
It
yeah,
went off
I'm
well.
not saying that maybe they shouldn't know. I'm not saying I know anything else. I'm just saying I'm just putting it on the table that maybe somebody just took some information for granted. like and then, we'll see all the feedback. So yeah, I'll like I said, I'll at least give them credit though for putting the schedule out way in advance. Because even for me, just being able to know, like, you can plan content around stuff. When the big pro tour events are going to be happening. Like this makes a lot of people's lives easy. Like just knowing schedule. Hell, even if you just run local stuff, right? Like you wanted to plan events, or you're going to be trying to decide if you want to go to a local convention or not, or whatever, and buy your tickets and pre-order. Like you now know you don't have to worry about that. So that makes life real nice for folks. But let's hop into the soapbox. And this is kind of related to the MagicCon stuff. I feel like the last couple of events I went to and came back from, there was a follow up on social media of people being upset, angry, sad that they weren't included in various things that happened. Whether that was going to an after party, going out to eat, maybe people were hanging out with somebody at their house that was local or their hotel rooms or whatever. And that seems to be a consistent thing. And inevitably, there's always some number of people that go, "Oh, I either didn't know you were interested or, sorry, didn't know where you were, whatever." But there's a lot of stuff that goes on at events. And there's a lot of reasons you might not get included with stuff that aren't purposely negative. Like using myself as an example, there's always some number of people I would like to hang out with or go to dinner with or whatever, but over the course of 3 days, I am only making room for maybe 4 or 5 meals I get to have with people or them with me, right? So we just may not line up schedules. That happens. Or some people want to go eat because the rest of their group needs to go do something at 7, so they're trying to go do dinner at like 5, but I don't get free till 6. I was like, cool, I'm just not going to be included in that thing. There's also been other times where one group reaches out to me and says, hey, we have an open seat at a reservation. Do you want to come join us? I'm like, cool. And then somebody else is upset that like I wasn't available to do dinner with them, or I didn't invite them to come along for dinner. And I'm like, well, it wasn't mine to invite you to. Somebody invited me and they didn't have any more open seats. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? You know? So it's a tough thing because I think everybody wants to be part of everything and everybody wants to be included and everybody wants to be wanted. And I get all that. But there have actually been events where I did like one outside thing with a group, and then the rest was either me and whoever I just happened to be talking to at the time or hanging out with. Like, we're just like, hey, man, I got time. I'm about to go eat. You want to go? And then we just go, and it's just a couple of us, and that's it. And I think it's kind of what you have to do at some of these events. You sort of either pre-plan, right now for the event in a week. You get with some people, say, hey, do you have anything going on Friday night or Saturday night? I want to make reservations at this spot or whatever, and then we'll go. So then it's already set. Or just accept you're going to play it by ear and you're going to miss some stuff. It's not that people particularly hate you, dislike you, whatever. Sometimes it's just people get lost in the chaos of an event, man. There's a lot going on. And the other side of that is if you are seemingly never included, and some people may genuinely have that or feel that way, I would look at it 2 ways. Either one, kind of question why, right? It could be a personal you problem. I mean, we got to be real about it. But the other part is, it's a problem you could also solve by being the initiator, right? You set up the reservations. You ask people their dinner plans, instead of waiting for everybody to come to you. And I know that's tough because as gamers, we got a lot of nerds that have social issues, social anxiety, whatever, and they're not good at doing that stuff. And maybe that is part of it. Maybe that compiles it, right? Maybe people didn't even know you were interested because you didn't express it. So it's just one of those things. I guess kind of putting this out as a PSA of just like, don't let not being engaged in something after the event or offsite or whatever get to you, because there could be a lot of reasons. And hell, I've been, like I said, at this point, hundreds of events, and sometimes you're sidetracked, you get busy. Especially as somebody who's working the event, you get called off to go do something, and then an hour goes by and you realize you were supposed to get a hold of somebody and whatever. Or hell, God forbid, sometimes the internet or phone connection's terrible in a convention center, so you can't even text somebody properly. So that's been hell. Like, dude, I tried to get a hold of you, but I just couldn't. I had to step outside later. That's a thing. So there could be a ton of reasons, man. I don't know. I mean, like, how do you treat that stuff at conventions, right? Are you a planner, or do you wait for other people, or do you just say like, F it, I don't really care if it happens, it happens?
I think I probably more if it happens, because especially once you have kids, they're very that your time is, you don't get to hang out as much as you used to hang out in the day anyway. So it's really been just, especially that one thing, going from one thing to the next thing, I very rarely get to hang out. So
that's a good point. I guess that's the other thing too. If you've got to deal with kids, like they're already directing a lot of your time. Yeah, that's a tough one. But yeah, like I said, it's just one of those things I just want to put out in front for anybody listening to this prior to going to MagicCon Vegas. Just like, hey, it's just a thing that happens. And I might make plans for one thing ahead of time, so I have that like for sure, whatever. But most of it, I'm like you, I just kind of play it by ear. Whatever happens, happens, and I don't worry about it. Like, there's too much stuff to be happy about and have fun with at a convention to let that bring me down. I think that's it. But all right, dude, what do you got?
All right, I was looking through Madden news as I do pretty much daily, and a streamer that goes by Joker Kale mentioned that on the latest Madden Battle Pass, obviously he streams Madden pretty much every day for between, and basically spends 6 to 8 hours a day playing Madden every day, and he still barely was able to complete the battle pass all the way to level 50. And that kind of sparked a debate on social media like, good Lord, if somebody whose full-time job it is to play Madden is barely completing the battle pass, what chance does anybody else stand? Like, what? That just, is that the plan, EA? If so, it seems like a plan that doesn't really allow for much, not even a work life for most people, game life balance. And maybe that's by design. Maybe they want to make sure, well, also they want to make sure you log in every day, do your daily. I get that part, that you want people to interact with your product every day, but still, if almost 10 hours a day is not sufficient to complete a battle pass, that seems excessive.
All right, y'all, we had a little bit of a weird issue there. I think something crashed on Brian's side. So there will be no more Brian Sonic for the rest of these episodes. It will just be y'all riding with me till we get to the finish line. But to wrap Brian's point up, because I at least want that still included, because he brought up a very good point about battle passes. They should theoretically be balanced to where I would think if somebody got on, let's say in his case, playing Madden, right? If you were to get on and play, let's say average 3 hours a night. Now you might play 6 or 8 on the weekend when you have more time. You might play 1 or 2 on each night during the week or whatever. But let's say you average 3 hours a night, maybe 3 hours a day, maybe 4. You should be able to reach the topmost level. I think that's how most battle passes should be created, right? You should have to put in an amount of time, but at least have it be an achievable goal. So at least like once you get to the last 6 or 7 days of it before it's discontinued, people might grind out some time because they can get there, right? But in his example, when you're talking about you have a creator that does 6 to 8 hours a day, I mean, you're talking about that's a person who's probably playing an average of 20 games a day on Madden, and they barely reach level 50, the top level. Like that seems kind of wild to me, unless for some reason their business model is that only the top, I'm assuming they can't be more than 1 to 5% actually reach the top level. But even that sounds like such a small amount. Like, I don't understand what the benefit would be to the business because as a player, if I just know I'm never going to reach a level, I'm just not going to attempt it. Because, I think about other games like with Magic's Battle Pass, like if you play 2 hours ish a day, I think most people tend to get there, right? And that's enough time. If you're playing best of one, you can probably get in 10 games or so, probably, maybe more. Yeah, definitely you could get in more than that, depending on what type of deck you're playing. But even if you're playing a slower deck, maybe you get 6 or 8 games in. If you're playing best of three, you can probably get, depending on if you win 2-0 or lose 2-0 or whatever, you're probably getting 6 to 8 games in there still, right? So that's reasonable for somebody to have to do. I'm thinking about like Marvel Snap kind of sort of has a thing like that. And that's like monthly, I think. And you get a new card and, all that. So like the rewards are worth doing and make it worthwhile. And that's not too grindy on a month to month thing. Now, their longer thing, trying to get all the rewards on their like unlock ladder or whatever, that's a whole thing. But on the equivalent, the closest thing they have to a battle pass seems reasonable. I play Teamfight Tactics. It also has a battle pass. And actually, I could probably log in right now and tell people where I stand on their battle pass thing. But even that, I tend to get to the end and all I play is 1 or 2 games a night, which each game is about 25 to 35 minutes, depending on when you get eliminated or whatever, or if you win. So that's not a huge investment. You're talking about maybe an hour, hour and a half tops if I play a third game. Like to me, that seems more than reasonable. I'm gonna hop in here just to give a clear example. Their battle pass has 50 levels. No, has 40 levels, and I'm at 33 with a month left. So realistically, I will probably reach their max in about another 2 weeks. I probably won't. I'll probably get there right after Vegas, honestly, unless I just play some in the hotel room while I'm bored. And then they have a few little bonus things after that. So all very achievable. but it still gets you to consistently get on and play. And I think that's always the goal of these battle passes, right? Obviously, they want to sell you like upgrades so you get extra stuff or whatever, bonus cards or whatever the case is, which is fine. I think they do make it worth it for you a lot of times in those. So I don't think that's bad to spend that money. But I think the ultimate goal is give you another reason to get on and grind a little bit. And man, the one for Madden just sounds rough. Like I couldn't imagine having to play more than 6 hours a night to be able to get to the max level. That just seems crazy. That it's an interesting thing. I'm glad Brian brought that up. But let me get into what did we learn here, because this is kind of an interesting thing. And I'm going to try to cover Brian's as well. So this would be a little something. Now, I don't think I can give this quite the same context Brian would, so bear with me, because we had this scripted for him to cover his stuff. But hey, technology doesn't always work for us. But there's a character, Nubia, a queen, and you know exactly what it sounds like. It's a black character, black woman, who happens to be in Multiversus, which we talked about it on the show before. It's the I guess wouldn't call it a battle royal game, more of the Smash Bros style game that's owned by Warner Brothers with all their different properties and characters. But there were people who were mad that this was included or she was included instead of other characters. And it was kind of like the usual suspects, right? It's a way of saying, tell me you're racist without telling me you're racist, right? When they're taking shots at her. But the reality is you're going to have a lot of characters in this game. Like multiple characters released practically every month at this rate because the Warner Brothers library is gigantic. Even if a character comes out in a week that I don't like, it's like, fine, it's not for me. They have such a huge library. We will get everything else. Oh, they haven't even, I was just looking here. They have like Shaggy and Velma and whatever. They haven't even got into actual Scooby Doo yet, right? The actual character. So they have tons of stuff they can do. So just seeing people be mad about this is just silly. Like, is it a lesser known character to a lot of people? Yeah, probably. I don't think that's that unrealistic, right? I could see that maybe being like, well, who is this? Like, why is this included? But that's fine. It's just another character to play with. I don't really, or at least back when I played Team Fight or League of Legends regularly, I didn't go like, oh, this new character doesn't speak to me. Why'd you make this? It's just like, yeah, it's fine. Maybe it's for somebody else. Like, that's okay. We don't have to like every single character. I mean, Multiverses is probably going to end up, I don't even think it'd be exaggeration to say, with hundreds of characters available. So it's not going to be that big of a deal if a character comes out every other month or something that you just don't care about and will probably never play. I mean, I'm looking at some of their roster now, and there's a few I don't even like. Rain Dog, I think, is one of them that I don't even know who that is, but doesn't bother me that it exists. It's neat looking, but I have no idea what even that character is. So I don't know. It's just one of those silly things that, people are going to be upset. Humans are going to human, but it's just like, man, not everything is for everybody, and that's okay. Not everything has to be for you. Even in Magic that I play regularly, I've said it before, I wasn't the biggest horror movie fan. So yeah, Duskmorn wasn't for me. I wasn't the target demo. Are there cards in there I like and I can still use? Absolutely. But it wasn't a set that spoke to me, as people say, right? And that's okay. I think it's fine. We aren't going to necessarily like every single thing about every property that we enjoy. And that's actually a good thing because I enjoyed Bloomborough more. Great. But you know what? There's a fair amount of people that started playing over the last month because of Duskmorn, and they saw the artwork and they saw the stories and they saw the stuff the content creators are doing for it or whatever. And that's okay. Like, there is a good reason to have something for everybody and keep us all intertwined. The company makes more money, we get more players to play with. Like, yeah, just let it ride. Quit being knuckleheads, people. Seriously. But to follow that up, I bring this up because it's like nerd adjacent news. mostly because it's Joker that happens to be a DC comic book character. But I was stunned to see. I guess I expected the reviews to at least be okay on this movie, but they have been abysmal. People have hated it. It's been a while since I've heard about people saying they walked out of a movie theater, right? But even beyond that, apparently, on its current pace, this movie is slated to lose somewhere between 150 and 200 million dollars for the Joker 2. That's nuts, right? I assumed at the very least with Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga, you'd get some number of people who just want to show up just for them. Now, I'll admit, when it comes to Joaquin Phoenix, I accept that he's a decent actor, but I don't think I enjoy most of the stuff that he's in. So I was in no hurry to go see Joker 2. Hell, I didn't see Joker 1. I also think it's weird having Joker without Batman or whatever. But the thing that's really weird about this movie is that they actually decided to make it a musical without really announcing ahead of time it was a musical. So a lot of people were caught off guard. And somehow they had a huge budget, even though it looks like the majority of the movie was shot in just a couple of locations, which makes it a little bit weird. So I don't know if maybe the two main actors got like half the budget. I have no idea. But yeah, it's a weird thing, especially with DC making it known they're trying to do a big reset on their DC movie universe and all that stuff. It wasn't even clear where this was going to sit and how it aligns with everything else. So this might be the last we see of something like this because, or at least with this director pulling off projects for the Joker, because man, that is a crazy amount of money to lose on a otherwise not just popular character, but at least in a previous movie that people seem to enjoy. I don't know if I've seen a fall off this big in a long time between an inaugural movie and its sequel. Like that seems I for real, I'm sitting here thinking, like, I don't even remember when the last time it was that we went from, oh, everybody enjoyed this and it made a decent amount of money to, I won't say bankrupting, but being a huge financial loss for the studio on the second one and having all the negative reviews. Like that's practically unheard of. So yeah, crazy. If you liked it, great. If you didn't, don't know what to tell you. A lot of other people agree with you. But all right, let's get into a couple of quick topics here. Now, one of the things I found earlier today that was interesting was that apparently Wizards of the Coast, and this was, I guess, announced at the end of September. It says in the Brand Licensing Europe 2024, so an European event about brand licensing deals. But Dungeons and Dragons is getting an album, like a musical release for their 50th anniversary. It's called Bardic Inspiration, a musical journey through the Forgotten Realms. Apparently, it's going to have 12 tracks, each crafted to represent key locations within D&D's Forgotten Realms setting. The music is intended to reflect the rich history and adventures that have shaped Dungeons and Dragons over the past 50 years. Also interesting, and to their credit, it's supposed to come out later this year. It's supposed to be fall, so it's probably coming soon. In vinyl, Dolby Atmos, and digital formats. So this is actually really cool that you could own a vinyl record of D&D music to play in the background of your D&D game sessions. We basically can have everything as nerds now. That's sort of what this feels like, right? That we can just we have all kinds of merchandise. Like we're getting watches, jewelry on top of just like the regular backpacks, t-shirts, everything else. Right? We have the biggest movies in the box office. We have all the shows people want to get streaming services for. Like we get all the crossover material. Like it kind of makes sense. Why not start getting music related to our geek hobbies as well, right? But yeah, I mean, 50th anniversary. I mean, that it doesn't surprise me that you're going to do something different. I mean, the fact that to my knowledge, it's really the only game right now that I would say it's still as top tier that's been around that long. And crazy that Wizards own both of those, right? That they own a 50-year game and soon to be a 35-year game, right? That seems almost unfathomable that we've reached that point. But I always like to remind people that we live in a world now where people have grown up and have always known Magic, D&D, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Warhammer, whatever, Dragon Ball Z, all these things to just have existed. And it's interesting to think about because when I was growing up, you know, people weren't sure what D&D was. Was it the occult? Were you getting together to summon demons? What's going on? Magic was brand new. I had to explain to people what card games were and how those worked, right? But now there's people who don't ever know a time where Warhammer wasn't always a brand that was on video games and in game stores, right? That Pokemon didn't always have a release every other year or whatever, right? They've only known that world to exist. And that's wild to think about sometimes. So when you see these like 50-year projects or whatever, you kind of go, yeah, I guess you have earned it. I mean, crazy to think about it in those terms, but yeah, 50 years. Long, long time. Also, want to remind everybody, kind of wrapping up from the beginning of the show, we were talking about the new MagicCon events. They did already open up the new perspective grants for MagicCon Chicago. So you can go to the website to magic.gg. You can apply now, and they will be selecting some number. I don't remember what the number is. I want to say it was like 5 people. And what they do is they give you money for your accommodations, plane tickets, all that stuff. You get like $2,000. You can just don't have to worry about it. You can just travel and enjoy your weekend. And I like to mention it when those things become open because I think it's a very good thing to have available. And they tend to try to find people who have maybe you're an underrepresented group, maybe you have an interesting story in your magic journey, whatever. And I was able to meet a couple of these people over the years that I say people, the winners. And it's actually been interesting. One of them was a community organizer, one of them I did a bunch of stuff with like a youth group. So they are picking people based on a variety of things, which is very cool. And it seems like they have had the right impact, right? People are getting a chance to go mingle with folks, get volunteers for things, get donors for things. And that's kind of what you want because these people likely would not be able to participate in that part of the ecosystem, that part of commerce or whatever within the game without some assistance. So it's very cool that they're getting these opportunities. So I say this to say, like, if you have any reason at all that you would be part of a minority represented group, a underrepresented individual on some level, whether that be a handicap or something or whatever, tell them your story and why you're a fan or how much magic's meant to you or whatever and take a shot at it, right? And maybe we'll see you in Chicago because I just think that's a cool thing that not a lot of games do, not a lot of conventions do. So it's very cool that this is a thing that Wizards just gives to the community, several thousands of dollars without really a return on investment. This is just like hoping you say nice things and that you get to help further your journey in the game or for your communities or whatever because you got to go to these events. So yeah, just very cool that that's available, and I think people should always be aware of it. That said, we're going to kind of wrap things up since I'm riding solo here. But I'm going to bring this to the dinner table, but I didn't have a particular topic this week. So I told folks we might experiment a little bit with story time. And I don't know why. Actually, I had a different story I was going to tell you, but this one's actually kind of fun. And this is short, but this would be a good way to wrap up the show. But there was a day I was at my shop and this guy calls up and he seems very, I'm trying to think the right word to describe it, like skittish, a little nervous, and I was like, okay, but that's that uncommon because again, we get people that have some social anxiety or whatever, and they don't know how to ask for things. That's okay. So I'm on the phone. Actually, one of my employees answers it and is kind of confused by the dude on the phone, not sure what he's asking for. So I take the phone, I ask him what's up, and he asks about, what's particular board game, and I tell him like, yeah, we have it. He's asking about prices, and I tell him. And then he asks about I don't know, I want to say it was like D&D or something, one of the role playing games, and I was, give him some rundown of it and what it is. But then I'm starting to think like after like the third question, like these questions don't really go together. This is like somebody that seemingly knows what we carry, but kind of is just asking questions about them for no good reason. Because it's not like there's a lot of follow up. It's just like, oh, but do you also have this? And do you have this? So I kind of ask him if there's anything else, and there's a long pause, and he says, "No, I think I'm good." I'm like, "Okay." So he hangs up, calls back. A couple minutes later, I answer the phone. Same guy, and he says, "Well, man, I kind of want to apologize." I was like, "Okay, well, I'm not sure what you'd be apologizing for, but enlighten me." He says, "Well, I called earlier. I don't know if you recognize my voice or anything." He's like, "Yeah, I thought it might be the same person." He says, "I I didn't want to just know about the games." And I was like, "Okay, here's now for now my mindset here is like, okay, now we're gonna get down to the nitty gritty of what this was." Because there was a moment where I thought maybe this is somebody, and this is sad, but maybe this is somebody who just needs someone to talk to, and they didn't know who to call, and they know I'll call like a friendly spot, and they'll make conversation. But there wasn't a lot of conversation being made, which is why I was confused. But anyway, he continues with, "I called around to a lot of places, and I said like a basic question, and nobody would answer it. And I just didn't want to be weird calling you guys and have you just hang up on me like everybody else did." And whatever. I was like, "Oh well, why would we hang up on you?" It's like, "Well, no, because it's not a gaming question." I was like, "All right, well, shoot, try me." And he says, and I swear to you, "Man, do you just know where I could get a good burrito?" And I paused because I'm like, "Does this dude for real just ask me for a burrito?" And then I had to like, for a couple of seconds, I'm running stuff through my head with the previous conversation. I went, "Oh, this dude's just high. He wants to know where to get a good burrito." So I'm like, "All right, I got you, fam." So I started giving the lowdown on like two or three places and like the different types of burritos and like which ones have like faster service or drive through or whatever. And I have never had a customer sound so excited on the other end of the phone. Like, "Man, thank you so much. Like, everybody I called just hung up on me. I guess they thought I was prank calling, and I just didn't want to do y'all like that, but I just didn't know where to go, and I was hoping somebody could help me out because like I couldn't find any good reviews." I was like, "Man, it's fine, no worries. Come by anytime, no problem. Just next time if you have a question, just ask me a question outright. You'll save us both a lot of time." Now, the funny thing about it is I had forgot about that conversation probably 2 days after we had it, but about 2 weeks later, dude comes in, he's shopping, and the voice is kind of familiar, but I don't know why. Right? I've never seen this guy before, whatever. And as he's picking out a couple things, he's bringing them to the counter. He looks at me, just smiles, and says, "Man, all them burrito spots hit. You were right." And I was just like, "Oh, you're the burrito guy." So he eventually became a customer because I answered some silly questions over the phone about a burrito. So there you go. There's your silly story of the day. Because, man, when you're in retails, those things happen all the time. But yeah, let me wrap stuff up and let you know. On behalf of Brian, if you want to find his stuff, you look up Brian Psionic out there on the interwebs. You can also find his writings over at Game Sided if you want to see. He was just talking about some actually interesting articles he wrote about some leaks slash spoilers on some games. So you may want to check out his stuff over there. Also, you can find me everywhere at PowrDragn, PowrDragn. And I have a lot of stuff coming up. And if you're a member over on the YouTube channel, level 2 or higher, we're going to have some extra videos from Vegas. So you'll get some private vlog action as well. Kind of first opinions, ground floor, kind of get the tour of the place, all that. So be sure to check that out as well. But as always, wherever you are watching or listening, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Please take care of yourselves and your family. Remember to be awesome. And most importantly, be awesome to each other.